Hello everyone, this is Stephanie. Welcome to another video. So today we're going to do a little review of S-LON Fire, and this is a beading thread by Beadsmith. So the S-LON Fire, and I'm just reading a little bit about it, it's braided and fused bead thread. Okay, so I'm using here the 0.006 inches or 0.15 millimeters. It's a 6 pound, and I'm using it in their black. Okay. So the way we're gonna review this is we're gonna make this pendant today. And this is gonna be a whole lot of fun to make. I used the S-LON Fire on this pendant. These two, I used Fireline. So we're gonna play with this and see how it comes out. All right, so let's get the materials that's going. So you need an 8mm Chaton, some 8mm pearls, 4mm pearls. I've got some 3mm pearls, which I use two different colors, but you can use all one color. I've got some bugle beads, 3mm. I've got two 11-0s, Mukies, and I've got one in the bronze and one in the Aztec gold because I like the contrast in color. It really makes a difference. Then a 15-0, again in the darker color, for contrast. I've got a bail here. I've got a jump ring to put on the bail. I've got a stop bead. Let's see, what else do we need here? We need the S-LON Fire. And I have a needle case, filled with different size needles. You'll probably use an 11 and a 12 for this pendant. All right, so let's clear this off and get started. Say, thread your needle with about 6 feet of thread, put on a stop bead, and leave about a 10-inch tail. So I always do that in advance and then show you, but I already got a knot. It was just sitting here, and I got a knot. So I'm going to take this out and come back. So I've threaded my needle with about 6.5 feet of thread. I put on a stop bead. I'm going to leave about a 10-inch tail, just in case we need it. We can always sew it in and use it to reinforce. So I picked up and dropped down to my stop bead, 3 11-0s, and a 4mm pearl, and I did that 4 times. Those into a circle by just sewing up through the beads after the stop bead. So I'm just going to sew through. I'll just start with the first, the 11-0s and go to the pearl. So just so you see where we've made a circle. Now just keep sewing all the way around to reinforce this circle and come past the stop bead. And you can exit a pearl at the moment. It doesn't matter where you're exiting. We'll just move the thread over where we need it. Reinforced all the way around. I came past the stop bead by a couple of, several beads. I'm exiting the pearl. I want you to move your thread through the first 2 11-0s of that group of 3. So I want you to exit that middle 11-0 of that group of 3, of the next group of 3. So just like this. So that's where you want to be exiting. So I'm exiting that middle bead of that group of 3. I'm going to pick up a 15-0, a bugle bead, and a 15-0. I'm going to sew through the middle bead of the next group of 3. So just right there. Just make sure that pops in front. Oops, my fingers now. There you go. So just like that, I'm going to pick up another 15-0. Bugle bead and a 15-0, and I'm going to do the same thing, exiting here. I'm going to sew through the middle bead, that middle 11-0 of the next group of 3. Okay, just going to do that 2 more times. Down to my last 15-0 bugle bead, 15-0, exiting this middle bead of the group of 3. I'm just going to sew through the middle bead of the next group, which is that original group we started with. Pull that through. That's what it looks like. And I'm just going to, so I'm exiting that middle bead. I'm going to advance right through the next 15-0 bugle bead. 15-0, I just like to complete things. Like so. And then through this 11-0, the one next to it, so these 2 right here. And this pearl. This is going to be the back of one unit. So what you want to do now is you want to just turn it over like this, and you'll be exiting, that pearl, just like that. The bugle bead, I'm exiting the pearl. I'm going to sew through the next pearl. So you want to make sure these kind of sit in between the pearl there. You don't have to pull it super tight, just so it fits nicely. I'm going to take another bugle bead, And I'm going to sew through the next pearl. And do that 2 more times. Last bugle bead through this pearl, like so. And then I just want you to advance through the next bugle bead and the next pearl. So just like that. So we're exiting this pearl. I'm going to pick up my 8mm pearl. Isn't that a beautiful color? Oh, so stunning. Love it. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that on so you see where my thread is coming out of that 4mm. I'm going to put it on just like that. And then I'm going to sew through the same side of the pearl that's right across from that other one. So like this. So through here. Then I'm going to sew back through the 8mm pearl, like that. I'm holding it with my thumb just to keep everything in place, and then back through this pearl here. So you see you can have a thread coming there, through the pearl, through the 4mm on the other side, out the 4mm, back through the pearl, and then back through this 4mm, and you won't see this thread. So you see that's how it's going to look. And just, you're exiting the pearl, just advance through the next bugle bead. And all the while, I'm holding it so it all stays in place. Pick up 3 of my 11-0s, so I'm using that Aztec gold here because I love the contrast with the bronze bugle beads. And so I was exiting the bugle bead, 3 11-0s through the next bugle bead, 3 11-0s, exiting the bugle bead, so through the next bugle bead, like so. Do that 2 more times. This group of 3 11-0s, exiting the bugle, sewing through the next bugle. So it's going to complete that round. And you're just going to advance your needle through the next 3. So those are the first 3 11-0s you put on. Just like that. I'm going to pick up 3 of my 15-0s, and I'm exiting this group of 3 11-0s. I'm going to sew through the next group of 3 11-0s. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s, exiting here. I'm going to sew through the next group of 3 11-0s. Just going to do that 2 more times. This group of 3 15-0s, sewing through the next 3 11-0s. So that's going to complete this round. And then you're just going to come all the way around again to reinforce. So I've reinforced all the way around and I'm exiting one of the group of 3 11-0s. Turn your piece to the side and I want you to sew right through this bugle bead, like that. And then through the 4mm pearl. So we're just getting set up to put some more beads on. So here's our first unit done, and so far so good. Okay, so we are exiting this 4mm pearl, and I just want to mention how things are going with the thread. So far so good, except that if you need to pull something out, I had a lot of trouble pulling it out, where with Fireline you really can take something out that maybe you've made a mistake or you've gone through a wrong bead. I designed, so I was trying something a little bit different and I had to pull it out, and it was difficult to pull out. The pearl, I'm going to pick up 2 11-0s a pearl, 2 11-0s a pearl, 2 11-0s a pearl, and 2 11-0s. So I have 3 pearls with 2 11-0s in between and on the end. So 4 groups of 2 11-0s and 3 pearls. I'm exiting this pearl. I'm going to sew through the other side of the pearl. I'm exiting. It's just going to give me a little space where we'll put the Chaton there later. So you want to just reinforce this all the way around and exit this pearl. So I've reinforced all the way around and I'm exiting this side pearl. So we're going to create another one of these units now. We're exiting this pearl. I picked up 3 11-0s and a pearl, 3 11-0s a pearl, 3 11-0s and a pearl, and 3 11/0s. And I'm just going to sew through the other side of the pearl I'm exiting. Then you're going to reinforce that around. Reinforced all the way around, and I'm exiting the middle 11 over group of 3 11/0s. Flip it over so we can do the back. So we're just going to do what we did before, 15/0 bugle bead and a 15/0. Exiting here, I'm going to sew through the middle bead of the next group of 3. Like that. 15/0 bugle bead, 15/0. Exiting this bead right here, we're going to sew through the middle bead of the next group of 3 11/0s. Like that. You can do that 2 more times. Down to my last 15/0 bugle bead, 15/0. Exiting here, just going to sew through that middle bead of the next group of 3. It's going to complete the back of this unit like that. And then just like before, exiting here, we're just going to sew through this 15/0 bugle bead, 15/0, then through this 11/0, the next one, so those 2 right there, and then your pearl. So just like that. I'm going to flip it over, just like so. Add my bugle bead, so I'm exiting this pearl. I'm going to pick up just a bugle bead and sew through the next pearl. Just make sure that kind of sits in between there. Bugle bead through the next one. So through the next pearl, just kind of pop it up a little bit. Do that 2 more times. Bugle bead, exiting the pearl, going to sew through this pearl. And then I'm going to advance my needle through the next bugle bead, the next pearl, I'm going to go through the next bugle bead. I'm just working my way down to this pearl right here, just because I like putting them on, the bigger pearl on in this direction, but really you can actually put the bigger pearl, you know, the 8mm pearl on through any of them. So you'll just be exiting the pearl right here. Picked up my 8mm pearl, exiting this side of this 4mm. I'm going to pop it on, hold it with my thumb, and sew through the 4mm on the top. So in the same direction that I came out on that side, so just like this. So you're going to see that thread, but we'll cover it. Then I'm going to go back through the pearl, like so, and then back through this 4mm pearl. So putting it on the same way we did on the other unit. So we're exiting the pearl. I'm going to advance through the next bugle bead. So we have my 3 11/0s. So these are the Aztec Gold, exiting the bugle bead, so through the next bugle bead. You got it, just like before. 3 11/0s, through the next bugle bead. 3 11/0s, through the next bugle bead. Last 3, through the next bugle bead. And you're going to advance through the 3 11/0s, those original ones you put on, and on go your 15/0s. 1, 2, 3 15/0s. So through the next 3 11/0s. Going a little faster now because I think you got it. 3 11/0s through the next 3 15/0s through the next 3 11/0s. So you just can do that all the way around. So 2 more times and then reinforce. So I've gotten this round, all reinforced. So I'm exiting 3 of these side 11-0s here. So I want to get to put this particular unit, this unit here and here. So in order to get to one, I'm exiting these 3. I'm going to sew through the bugle bead, through the purl, and I think I got a knot. I don't know if I can pull it through. Oh gee. All right, let me see if I can get that knot out. I came through the 4mm. I don't know where I got the knot from, but I can't get it out. Look how tiny it is. So I pulled it through, and I just think it's a good, I'm probably going to cut it off and add a new thread, but first I'm just going to see if I can work on it with that, that little knot in there. I actually have no idea how that knot got there. So I'm exiting, so I came through the bugle bead, I came through the 4mm purl, through these 2 11-0s, and through this 4mm purl. And I'm just going to add another unit on, just like this, right here. So I will put a timestamp, or you can just rewind, but I'll put a timestamp anyway, to where this unit begins, and you can add one here, and then you'll work your way around to this purl and put another one there. Note, my thread is starting to bunch up. See that? So it's the braided part of the braided part seems to be bunching up. I wonder if that's because I have the knot on there. So I'm just going to finish this. You see, it's kind of separating a little bit here. I'm going to finish this unit, this particular unit, and then I'm going to cut this thread and I'm going to put a new thread on, because I'm sort of at a point where I can't really cut this. So hopefully I can get through without too much of a problem. So I just want to let you know as we go along, like what I'm running into. Okay, so I did get that unit done, but I'm just afraid to go through the bugle beads. So the unit is done. I reinforced. You're exiting these 3 11-0s. I'm just going to talk you through to this side. So you're exiting these 3 11-0s here. Sew through the bugle, this 4mm, and just all these, the 2 11-0s, 4mm, 2 11-0s, and then through this bead, and then add your last unit on. I'm going to sew this thread in. I'm going to add another thread so that I can complete my my last unit. Okay, I was able to finish it, but it really gave me a hard time with that. And I don't know where that knot came from. It's not like I don't remember a knot being in there. And then it unraveled, and that was really kind of, really disturbing. So, just be careful with that. We're going to move on, but the next thing we're going to do, so I finished the last unit, and I did sew my thread, and this is just my tail thread. So the next thing we're going to put on is the Chaton. So just get to this point, and then we will we'll start the bezel. Gosh, and I'm worried, but we'll see how it goes. Put the Chaton on. So I cut a piece of thread about 30 inches or 25 inches, something like that, because I'm just too afraid to be using too long a thread. It's knotting. I'm having issues with the braid. It's braided, and just pulling it through the needle is difficult. So I know this is a first try, but so far it's a challenge. All right, so I just put a stop bead on and left a tail to sew in. I'm just going to sew through 3 of the 11-0s on one side of the unit. So we're going to connect with these right here. Pull that through. I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s. And I'm going to sew through the next 3, like that. And do that again. 3 15-0s through these, through the next 3 11-0s. I'm going to do that 2 more times. That's 3 15-0s, exiting, the 3 15-0s here. I'm just going to sew through these. That's my original 3. I think I'm caught here. Let me just, there we go. Okay. So just pull it through like so. I'm going to pop my stone in, and you want to make sure, give it a push down, that it's sitting down in that little, the 15 O's and these 11 O's, it's like sitting under as much as possible. So just give it a push. It almost clicks into place. Okay, so I'm exiting these 3 11 O's right there. I have 3 15 O's, and I'm going to sew through the 11 O's. So we're putting another round of 3 15 O's on top of the previous round. See that? So 3 15 O's through the 11 O's. Just going to do that all the way around. Now, just a note here, if you're using a different size Chaton, a different brand, if you're using a different seed bead and such, you just have to make this fit. So if 3 is not working, try 4 and see how that works out. But you just know that you could change this a little bit, to make it fit. All right, so do that 2 more times. That's my last 3 15 O's, exiting the gold 11 O's. So we do the last 3 gold 11 O's, like that. And that's just going to place everybody in front. And don't worry, your stone's going to be a little bit wonky. So this is what it looks like. You're coming out of the 11 O's. Advance through the 3, the first 3 15 O's that you put on. So right there. I'm being really careful with this thread. Okay, so this is where we're exiting. Pick up 3 15 O's again, and we're going to go from these 3. So we're exiting here. Going to skip over the gold, the 11 O's, and sew through these 3 15 O's. Now, again, if in this space you need 4, you can put 4 here. Just make sure you do the same amount around each side. So there's 3. You can even put a bugle bead here. There's another 3. So sewing through the 3 15 O's. Like that. Stone still isn't staying, but it will once we reinforce everything. So you're going to do that 2 more times, 3 15 O's through the 15 O's, 2 more times. That's 3 15 O's through those final 3 15 O's. That's what it's going to look like. Now you're going to reinforce it and then meet me back. Okay, so I'm all done and I've reinforced. I did it a couple of times. I mean, it looks beautiful. It's just this thread is just, it's a challenge at the moment. I mean, maybe after I make a few pieces, it'll make a difference. So here you go. Just going to sew this thread in, and you can actually sew in your tail threads as well. So that's what it's going to look like. So we're going to add some pearls down in there, and then we're going to do a little bit more on the top, just to give it a little depth. So I already did 2 because I just wanted to see how it was going to come out. So I'm just going to turn my piece over to the back, so just like that. And I'm just thread a needle with, 30 inches of thread, put on a stop bead, leave a tail to sew in. Just want you to sew up through. So see these 3 here and these 3 here and these 2 here? Just want you to sew up just through this first one right here. So that, of those 3, the bottom. So see my threads coming out of that bottom bead. Up a 3 millimeter pearl, and I'm going to skip the middle one and sew through this one. I'm just going to make sure that it's seated in there, like so. Then I'm going to pick up 2 of my 11 O's, and I'm going to sew through. So I'm exiting the top here. I'm just going to sew through the first one on this side. So right here. Like that. I'm just going to play with them to get them straightened out. And then you want to go in there and get through the pearl. So here, see how I'm going through the pearl? Like that. And then out the bottom one here. So we've just kind of done the same thing on the other side. And just kind of straighten that out a little bit. And see, how does that look? So that's how that's going to look. And then, so you're exiting that bottom seed bead. You're just going to pop through this pearl, like so, and then this 11-0, and you're going to do that again. So here we'll do it again together. Picking up my pearl, exiting this little 11-0, I'm going to sew through the top 11-0, so I'm skipping the middle one, like that. Just push it, place it in there. I'm going to pick up my 2 11-0s,
And I'm going to sew through the top
here.
Now again, if anytime you're having trouble making something fit,
You can always try a different bead.
okay, so I've come through the top, this one, and then you want to remember, you can't forget to go through the purl. So find where we went through the purl. Here we go. So through the purl, and then through this bottom
11-0.
right there. Don't get caught. Okay. Holding my breath while I do this. So just like that, so you've added your last purl on. Well, you've done 2. I already did 2 because I wanted to test it out. And can we get through this purl? So try to get through this purl. And you could even do that next 11-0. So wherever you can get through at this point, I got through the purl without a problem. And then I'm just going to sew that thread in. So when I turn it on this side, so you're going to see that those pearls down in there, but we're not done yet. We still have one more round to go. Embellishment on the front, and then we'll be done. So I've threaded my needle with maybe 2.5 feet of thread, put on a stop bead, left enough of a tail to sew in. I'm going to sew through these 3 15-0s on the side of the purl.
So I just switched to a size 12 beading needle because it's
Tough to get this thread through. So just like that, I'm going to pick up 3 15-0s, and I'm going to sew through the 15-0s on the other side.
Oh, that's much easier.
There we go, just like that. So now I'm just going to advance my needle through these 3 right here.
Let me just check my sample to make sure that's what I did.
Yes, okay. And then back up these 3.
And then you're going to go through number 1,
that first bead of this group of 3. I know we're getting picky here, but I just think it looks pretty. And then you're going to make sure that pops up a little bit, and you're going to go through bead number 3, skipping bead number 2. And you just want to make sure that that pops up when you pull. So you might have to help it pop up like so. And then come down through these 3 again. And it should pop once I get through these. There we go. Okay, so do you see that gives us, that's going to make sort of a, you know, a little opening here.
and when you look through, you'll see the pearl. But you see how it kind of gives a little finished look here or here.
And here's how, this is how it looks when
They're all done. So I really like how that looks.
So you're just going to do that all the way around. So then you're going to advance through the next 3 11-0s and through these 3 15-0s. There we go. You're going to pick up 3 15-0s and sew down these 3 like that.
You should have no trouble with the size 12 beading needle.
What a difference this made. Maybe that's what I need to use for, I don't know, for the whole thing. Use a size 12. I don't know. Through these 3. So just coming around again, right? Just so you can pop that center bead up. Through these 3. Through bead number 1 of the next 3 and bead number 3. So skip that next one and go through the next one. So that's the 3rd bead. So you pop it up. And then through these again. These 3. And then 3 11-0s. Bending my needle a little bit so it doesn't want to come out. Come here, you. There you go. So through the 3 11-0s, And that's going to pop that center bead up. And then through these 3 15-0s. And you're just going to repeat that 2 more times. So do you see when I pull back a little bit, do you see how that gives sort of a finish? Actually, when I hold it like this. See, so we're just going to sort of give that little finish on the inside. So do that 2 more times and come back. And we'll finally take a look at our pendant and add a bail. Let's get a bail on here. So I've just threaded my needle with about 1.5 feet of thread. I put on a stop bead, left enough of a tail to sew in. I've just sewn through one of the top pearls of a unit. I added an 11/0, a 3mm pearl. I put a jump ring on my bail, so this is the bail I'm using. I just think it looks pretty with this. So I put a jump ring on so I could sew in the direction I want to sew. And then I have another 3mm and an 11/0. I'm just going to sew through the other side of the pearl that I'm exiting. Just going to give that a pull. And then you just want to make sure when you reinforce this that ring, that jump ring or your bail, whatever you're putting there, is going to sit in between the 2 pearls. So just that's going to happen as you reinforce it. So come around again and reinforce and just make sure you push that jump ring in. Okay, so my thoughts on S-LON Fire. So my overall opinion is it's not for me. And I'll tell you why. So 1, it knots immediately. You saw in the video, it just knotted immediately. And 2, this is a braided beading thread. I'm going to show you a picture that I took of it. I wanted to get a super close-up, so I took a super close-up picture of it. This is my bead mat, by the way. It looks like a sponge, right? So this is what it looks like. So you see the bumps there? They're very rough. I don't like the feeling on my skin of those that braided rough texture. And it makes it hard to get through the beads when it's rough like that. I don't find that helpful at all. It's impossible to pull out a mistake. So if you need to back out of a bead for some reason, I couldn't do it. It just knotted. It was impossible, and I had to be so careful that it just took way too much time for me to back out. And when I did, like I said, it just got all knotted and it kind of pulled apart a bit. So that was a definite a negative. And also it fills up the beads really quickly with that braiding. So you can't get multiple passes through, like you can with other beading threads. The thread that I would highly recommend to you is the Berkeley Fireline Thermally Fused Tough. So this is a little different than regular Fireline. This is the fishing line that you get at the sporting goods store, or I get it online on Amazon. It's so good. It's so smooth, so it's a little finer and smoother than regular Fireline, but yet it has a little bit of stick to it, so it gets through the beads easily. You can do multiple passes. It doesn't knot immediately. If you do get a knot, it's pretty easy to take it out. So it has all the really good characteristics of regular Fireline. It's just a little thinner and it's a little smoother, and I love that about it. The only thing about this one is, like regular Fireline, the smoke color does come off on your fingers, and I hate that, but that's why I've been trying to find another thread. That's why I tried the S-LON, because I thought the color doesn't come off on your hand, so that is the pro on this one. But everything else I don't like. So I would highly recommend this one. If you don't mind the color coming off on your hands a little bit, do the smoke. I also have the crystal, which I've been getting into using as well. Check this one out. I'll put a link in the description box. I'll put a link for the S-LON as well, although I don't recommend it, but you might want to try it. All right, so I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.